This morning we have a very exciting panel about opportunities within different regions. We have a dynamic panel. We'll start out, and my name is Muthu. I'm the founder of Zone and also the curator of the startup Podium. I have with me the first speaker, who's from Hong Kong. She would talk about the opportunities and what all challenges within that region is. Linda, over to you. Just give us a quick introduction about you and the organization you represent, so I don't short sell you on the introduction. Please go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Lydia from Hong Kong Medical Device and Healthcare Industry Association. And our association has comprised of different companies from healthcare and also medical company in Hong Kong. We group together such that we can create more impact, especially in the MedTech development in Hong Kong. And especially recently, our main theme in the past few years is how to bring up more startups related to the MedTech company. And especially during COVID, we have exerted a lot of impact to both the local health and also to helping the government to source different kind of urgent equipment, especially during the COVID period. So maybe now I would like to share with you a simple slide to let you know the opportunities and challenge that we face during COVID, such that we can share the experience that we have. So what we like to share today is how the startup, not only medical related, but also non-medical related startup have to bring up in this during COVID period. And I think Hong Kong is like most of the cities or country in the world. We start the COVID first wave back in the end of June this year. And then we face a similar problem is because of the experience that we learned from SARS back in 2003. The public is pretty aware of the health importance. And so everyone is almost geared up with their masks. And also all medical staff are with their PPE. So very soon after a few weeks, like other cities and countries, we are in lack of medical resources, okay? Because traditionally, we do not have much production in Hong Kong already, because Hong Kong is a very small place. And such that most of our PPE and medical resources are indeed import from other countries, okay? So by then, because all countries and cities are in lack of material and also medical or PPE become something that which is not allowed to be exported from other countries. So there is a medical shortage for quite a while in Hong Kong. And then because of that, I think the government also will have some announcements to not only the public not to go out for shoppings, but also most people start to work from home, okay? And due to that, I think like most of the other world, our economy has shrunk for about 3-point-something%, even in the third quarter, and we have even higher number in the previous quarter. And now you can see that it's not only about the economic strength, but more important is that we have gone through a number of waves. And just like now, we are under the fourth wave of COVID, and there are quite a lot of uncertainty in the outbreak. And that's why there's affect the whole economy quite significantly. But there is a lot of challenge during this past year. But I think at the same time, we need to look for the way forward. I would say there's not only challenges, but very important is at the same time create some opportunities. As I mentioned before, in Hong Kong, before we have a very, very minimal production, and we don't even have a line for producing the masks. But because of COVID, the government have helped to brought up together with the Life Science Park to set up very quickly for the production line for the mask. And it also showed the public the importance of having your own MedTech development and also to get the technologies from overseas. But quite interesting that even though we do not have mass production in Hong Kong, but the research of MedTech and health tech in Hong Kong is pretty active. And we're pretty lucky is there is a test kit, which is self-developed in Hong Kong and also produced in Hong Kong. So we can indeed respond pretty fast, such that we can also not only use the kit in Hong Kong, but also the test kit has been exported For example, this test kit has been used in United Manchester in the UK for COVID-19. And also now what all countries and cities are fighting for is the vaccine. And there is numerous vaccine development, and it's again demonstrate the importance of having the MedTech R&D. Another opportunities I would say COVID bring, even though there's a lot of impact to the economy, but to the startup, indeed it creates quite a number of opportunities in Hong Kong. For example, before, in order to get a new technologies or technologies from a startup into the hospital is pretty challenging and very difficult. But because of COVID, I think people, including the medical staff, are pretty open. Okay, they are willing to try different kind of new technologies which we do not expect in the past. For example, we start using the robot to deliver the meals and to deliver the medicine so that we can have a better infection control and minimize the interaction of the medical staff with the COVID patient. And also in Hong Kong, we start the teleconsultation, which is not started before due to a lot of legal issue. But now, because the patient is no way to go to the clinic or hospital, especially those chronic disease patient, now we start the teleconsultation, and also we start the delivery of the drugs directly to the customer without going to the clinic or hospital. And also we start to make use of the medical IoT for remote monitoring from startup company, such that we can monitor the COVID-19 patient much more properly. So I would say as long as to the startup, COVID opens quite a lot of opportunities, especially the adoption of some new technology to be developed. And this is a very quick sharing from our side, such that you can have a know what is happening in Hong Kong.
Thank you so much, Linda. And can we go to the next speaker, please? Suthira, please. You're on mute. The most famous word for the year.
Yes, thank you. I would like to have some slide presentation to share
sure, please.
us as well. So I'm Suthira Taychakhoonavudh. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Baiya Phytopharm. So we are a biotech company, startups in Thailand that just start around 36 months ago. I'm so sorry that the sun is kind of bad here in my screen. So so instead of using normal fermenters, we use plant-based technology to produce recombinant protein. So what is this recombinant protein? They can be used for cosmetics, medical devices. They are also biological drugs and vaccines. With our platform, it has the flexibility to produce biopharmaceutical, to make it in months rather than years. So we started in 2018, and we have our aim is to replace the fermenters with the plants. So before COVID-19, we have developed several prototypes and products that already launched into the market. For example, fibroblast growth factors for lab reagents and cosmetic industries. We have developed prototypes for test kits like hand-foot-mouth disease, EV71. We also have prototypes for drugs and animal biologics drugs and human biologics drugs that we aim to go into finish animal studies and go into clinical trials. And we also do contract research service. For example, if scientists have their monoclonal antibodies and want to produce in plants, we will produce it for them. So we are the first plant-produced pharmaceutical biotech company in Southeast Asia, I believe. So with COVID-19, for us, recombinant protein is something that can be used, especially virus itself as a protein. So at the beginning of the pandemic in February, we are able to produce several proteins related to COVID, and we use that to develop the rapid antibody test kits. We are the first company to do it in Thailand, from the upstream process to downstream process. Then we move on to the vaccines for COVID-19. So we get our vaccines in February, but with the ecosystem in Thailand for the testings, animal testing facilities and other stuff. Right now we finish all animal studies, and we aim to go to into the human clinical trial in next year. So right now we have 6 prototypes of vaccines. We already finished it. We also have 3 monoclonal antibodies that we aim to finish our animal studies and get into clinical trials. So for us, COVID-19 is an opportunity for small biotech like us to, you know, to kind of chime up, especially when there are concerns about security, vaccine security, health securities, and how are we going to supply all those products when, you know, there are these products are in high needs all over the globe. So today, actually today we'll launch a big crowdfunding program in Thailand to initiate, like to start our plans, manufacturing plans for COVID-19 vaccines that we aim to go into clinical trial in next year. So for us, this is a very, it's a big opportunity for COVID-19 for small startups like us, especially if you have something, technology that can, you know, respond to this kind of pandemics. I think it's a big opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next speaker is Brian. Brian, just make a quick introduction of yourself, please, so people know who you are, and then please go with your presentation.
Will do. My name is Brian Lewis. I work for MedTech Canada, which is the Medical Technology Industry Association in Canada. And what I'd like to do is just go quickly through a slide deck that talks about the opportunities and challenges in the Canadian medical technology marketplace overall. So just to quickly go through the overview of healthcare in Canada is that it's a publicly funded healthcare system extensively. And the overall governance of the system is under the Canada Health Act, but each province is responsible for the delivery of healthcare in Canada. And when you look at Canada, it's a vast country, and we're talking about, you know, places like Singapore and Hong Kong, where there's a vast size difference in the market. But if you look at Canada, most of the market, excuse me, I just popped forward too quickly there, is that Ontario and Quebec account for 60% of the business in Canada, then followed by British Columbia and Alberta. So there is, you know, there's an extensive geography, but most of the market is in Ontario and Quebec, followed by British Columbia and Alberta. And not to forget that Quebec is predominantly French. They communicate in English, but French is the primary language. The medical technology industry in Canada, let's go really quickly to the fundamentals. It's an $8 billion US market. It's got world-leading research and development infrastructure. It's one of the things we're known for in Canada. And in the medical technology industry, there's very much high growth clusters in artificial intelligence, connected health technologies, image-guided therapies, and in vitro diagnostics. So there's a lot going on there, but there's a need for a lot of help and a desire for companies and others to come into Canada to really help grow these markets further. So let's take a look at the Canadian marketplace in terms of what happened with COVID. Like everywhere else, we've just been talking about, there's really high demand for PPE, ventilators, and in vitro diagnostics, now followed by vaccination supplies. A number of months ago, the Canadian government overall for the whole country put a RFP out for 35 million syringes for vaccination supplies. So there's quite a bit of market demand there. And actually for PPE, in vitro diagnostic and vaccination supplies, there still is quite a bit of demand. There was a number of postponements and cancellations of most non-COVID procedures, which created a huge backlog of procedures. And now going forward between the waves, infection control procedures and healthcare delivery has slowed patient through output. So there's this, if you will, this building in the backlog of procedures and surgeries, but there's also a desire to minimize in-person physician visits to lead to system enablement of virtual visits. So this has created a market in Canada that's quite different than what was there before and built. So I'm just going to go through that very quickly. The Canadian healthcare system going forward in the supply chain, one thing they know for sure, they need supply chain diversification. A lot of our PPE and other products came from China and other markets. They realize they need to manufacture more at home and diversify supply. But what that means is If you're going to manufacture more finished products, you need to buy components and raw materials. So there's more of a market here. So what we're talking about here is the market for companies to come to Canada and actually help build up that supply diversification from component parts, you know, and raw materials, and also through to finished products, because a diversified supply chain means you're going to get the products from more than just one or two sources, because they viewed that as being a problem. Then there's the move to virtual care. Like many, many other markets in the world, this has really been an enabling capability. Canada's environment, again, as I told you earlier, it is a predominantly a public system, government paying. One of the things they did is they moved forward with the government policies and procedures to really enable virtual care. And there's a lot of ongoing R&D in manufacturing. So companies looking at coming into Canada that offer good virtual solutions to make things more efficient, to lessen the human touch point, if you will, and things like robotics that we were seeing earlier from Hong Kong. Those sorts of things, there are real market opening up in Canada. Following that, you know, there's an ongoing trend to how do you get, you know, the treatment capacity. So there's diminished system treatment capacity, procedural backlogs that I talked about earlier. So solutions overall to enable capacity, the increased efficiency, like we were talking earlier, the virtual digital components, virtual digital products for at-home treatment. And because it has been a public system where most of the treatment was happening in the hospital, there's a real desire to move out to the tertiary treatment centers and products and solutions that are cost effective, whether it be capital equipment and others, to really actually move into that tertiary treatment center. So that's, you know, some of the movements that are happening in the marketplace and some opportunities for foreign companies coming into Canada. And I can provide this slide kit. These are all of the research and development centers with a medical technology focus. And I've got at the bottom of the slide here that there, our trade commissioner who set me up to speak at this particular conference is willing to speak to anybody about the process of coming to Canada. And that's it. The door is open. There's a lot of opportunity here, and the government is open to innovative solutions more than I've ever seen them before in terms of talking to companies that can actually help them make things more efficient. And that's it on that.
Thank you for that presentation. Thank you to all three of you for a great presentation. My first question is maybe to Brian. I mean, I do lots of work down in Atlantic Canada at UNB and St. Mary's and so on. Many, many years ago, maybe not that many, maybe about less than 10 years ago, they came up with the startup visa program, you know, so to help startups get into the Canadian scene. So can you sort of talk about that? What type of, how you can facilitate immigration, you know, what are the, you know, challenges and things like that to get into Canada for startups in particular?
Yeah, so one of the things, and it's an excellent question, just a few years back, as you were saying, many companies that were actually developing products and solutions in Canada, in order to go outside of Canada, you get somebody to come in that had the technical expertise, experience, and wisdom. It was quite a cumbersome process. Canada has recognized that they can't just develop from within, they need to grow the infrastructure. And so what they've done is that the immigration policy now, it's much faster to get somebody in that's got the right kind of experience to come into Canada to help. So what used to take a year to 2 years is now 3 months or shorter in terms of getting that skill set in. Because we as an industry association spend a lot of time saying, look, I get it that we want to build our at-home talent. And we want to, but without a basic level of skill coming in from the outside, we just do not have enough skill. So they've actually changed that particular process and made it better even than what you saw 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay. Now, how about in Hong Kong? How does that help? How do you help startups come in, or how do they go about it? Is it simple? Is it difficult?
Yeah, I think just similar to Canada, I think MedTech talents is all in short in everywhere, in every cities and country. And that's why Hong Kong now, just like in Canada, we take maybe 1 to 2 months in order to get people in to get in Hong Kong. And also very good is recently we do have a lot of support from the government for funding, like the matching fund and the initial fund fee offers that can be provided in the science part. And also another one point that's good is that because currently we are also part of the, I'm not sure if you have heard about, is the Greater Bay Area, which consolidate not only Hong Kong, Macau, but also 9 cities in China. So in Hong Kong, it will be a very nice place for international startup to have one of their R&D arm in Hong Kong, because we are well protected by IP. And at the same time, they can have a pretty cost-effective production at our backyard, like in Shenzhen or in Guangzhou. And then, because of special policy, those devices, as long as you are used in Hong Kong, in the coming future, you can also apply in all these 9 cities, okay, in China. And without going through the process of the national NDA in China first, but those you can use in Hong Kong can be applied in those cities, especially those hospital which is owned by the Hong Kong funded organization. And that will be a very good breakthrough. And also some new policy has been implemented in Guangdong as well to facilitate people to bring in new MedTech into China.
Okay. And how about Thailand? I mean, Thailand's always been very friendly with tourism and so on. So how about in terms of startup? Is there much, is there much happening for startups coming in?
It's a government policy, though. You know, we're trying to build a Thailand 4.0 country, meaning that we're aiming for more startups, more techs, especially deep techs. The problem about it is that, you know, like listening from Canada and Hong Kong, I myself as a startup is like, oh, this is so tempting. I would like to move to Canada or Hong Kong, because even the government trying to say, oh, like we're supporting more startups, but the ecosystem here is not like, it's not on yet, you know, like we work on drugs, pharmaceuticals, and all the testing that we have to, you know, to get it done, mostly we need to kind of like send it outside the countries, and that's like a hurdle for us. It takes us longer. Even if we have our prototype faster, testing is a big problem for us, you know. On the other hand, with the COVID-19, I think the government kind of see that, okay, this is very important. If we don't have it, it means that we have to be, you know, we have to be self-reliant more than importing everything from other countries. So this is an opportunity for them to kind of build all the ecosystem up. And I kind of see that in the last year, in this year, you know, this thing has been improved a lot compared to 2 or 3 years that I have been in this, you know, in this field. So good and bad.
Okay, that's so we have a little bit of mix, but it will take some time. So, for example, like even in India, for many years ago, it was not that easy to come and get funding and getting started. But today, it's like flourishing and things are happening. So, I think, I mean, the 2 good examples of catching up and doing great is China and India, right? So, I mean, they have changed so much in the last couple of decades. So, I'm sure the next wave will be out there in Southeast Asia happening. So that'd be really cool. So my next question, I'll go to my Hong Kong panel. In terms of funding, is it easy for companies coming outside? I mean, many countries don't actually commit funds to companies that are not their own. How does that work in Hong Kong? Is there any venue for people to come raise funds and so on within in the Hong Kong system?
Yeah, indeed, I would say in the past 3 to 5 years, there's very significant changes, especially for funding related to MedTech. And the VC is become very active in Hong Kong, especially because they believe that they will be able to bring up startup in Hong Kong and bring the technologies to the market in China and also Southeast Asia. And also there is a new chapter in our stock market in Hong Kong now, especially for medical technology, including pharmaceutical and also medical devices. Even though you don't have any revenue, there is a new chapter, we call it the Chapter 18A, okay, which allow the pharmaceutical company to raise funds in the stock market, okay, without any revenues. And this is very good and attractive policy, so that VC is much more, and PE are more willing to invest in MedTech related company. Okay, because there is a way out, because after a few years, they can be listed in the stock market, and there is an exit strategies for the startup.
Great. How about Suthira? How about in Thailand? How are the funding situations for companies coming from outside?
From outside the country,
Yes, yes.
or I
And
think from
also
outside the
within, what are the opportunities of raising funds?
yeah, I think this is really the situation is still pretty bad for company from outside the countries, because for us, even we're in here, it's still pretty hard. On the other hand, I have to say that VCs are looking for startups. It's like we don't have a success case yet, especially for me that working on deep techs. We don't have a success case here for VCs, for Thai local VCs to have that belief that Thai deep tech can be one of those things too. So they interested in like company outside Thailand. What for Thai governments, they are really focused on funding Thailand local, like Thai local startups, but they have been focusing on more like not so much deep techs, but more more AI and other stuff than like from my field, like biotechs and that stuff. So it's a mixture of everything, but I think we're moving there. Especially, I think we need to have one success case, and then that kind of draw all the VCs to keep, okay, this is doable, this is workable.
Great. Brian, how about in Canada? How does it work for startups coming in? You're on mute. You're on mute.
I am. Thank you. You caught that very quickly. You're good with that. Is that in Canada, it's about what's going to happen with the company if they're coming in. Are they going to be, are there going to be bricks and mortar? Are they going to be landed here doing the work here? It's not about going, but it's about coming in and being part of the situation in Canada. And if that's the case, there's no difference between internal organizations and people coming in from the outside. A change that's happened, and I wouldn't say it's an easy procedure. I don't think money is as free-flowing as it once was out there. But what we do know for sure is that when it comes to government grants and subsidies and everything that was going on, the Canadian government used to spread it evenly across everybody. Now they're much more targeted. They're looking at what's your degree of success and your potential for success. And it's potential of success, not just for selling the product in Canada, but more as an export commodity too, to be able to actually export outside the country. So there's more due diligence that needs to be done in showing how well your product could perform if you go forward. I think it was just 10 years ago, 5 years ago even, it was relatively easy to get some degree of government grant to get started, and now it's much more focused.
Okay, now I'll stick to you, Brian. In terms of tax reliefs and so on for these foreign companies coming in, and also your own companies going out, is there any benefits, anything you do for them to encourage them to shift based or things like that?
Yeah, there is actually a number of things. One, the tax base for organizations coming in here is quite, they've made it quite attractive. So in terms of taxes, the other thing is the number of trade agreements going out of Canada to export out of Canada is quite attractive to either, whether it's the North American Free Trade Agreement or agreements with Europe and other markets, South America and Asia Pacific. Canada's got a lot of trade agreements in line. So when it comes to export, there is a fair amount of benefit that's there. So tax credits and then trade agreements.
Okay. How about in Thailand? How about tax breaks and so on for startups? How does that work?
Yeah. So a lot of tax, benefits for startups like us, especially if you do investments. And this is a good thing that I want to add, that like Thailand has a very good tax benefit profile for companies that invest in like these things. Like it's like 10 years tax free if you do investments, especially for biotechs and pharmas. And you do investment, especially if you do it from the upstream process from the beginning. So this is something that tempting, but I think it's a trade-off. You know, if you have to think about like the ecosystem, the regulatories, the testings, and all other stuff. I don't think the tax itself is the only benefits that startups are looking for, but they're looking for, because cost is something that, you know, a big thing for us, and time is the biggest cost. So for us, I think it's a trade-off, right? If you have tax benefits, but then your products go into the market so slow because of the regulatories, all other stuff, then
Okay.
I think that's some kind of
so the benefit is also has to be outweighed with the disadvantages you're saying. Okay, cool.
Yes.
And how about in Hong Kong? I'm sure there must be quite a number of things happening there.
Yes, indeed, in Hong Kong, because traditionally, as many people know, Hong Kong is a financial center. There is not much work in the R&D. I think in the past 10 years, the government, in order to encourage companies to do more R&D, especially for startups, they are very good, because, for example, for your spending in R&D, you will have a 3 times taxation fee when you get the profit. Okay, so for example, if you spend $10 in your R&D, then in your profit, you will have $30 to be no tax. Okay, and this is to encourage the company to reinvest your earning into the R&D, and that's the first thing. I think, and secondly, for the taxation in Hong Kong is having a very simple taxation system, and the tax is pretty low. And but at the same time, I think the good thing is that there is a lot of funding and subsidies from the Hong Kong government as in fact incentives for people to perform R&D, especially early one, such that we can have a home growth, as mentioned as Brian, home growth startup, especially in the new technologies.
Okay, I'm going to ask a very different type of a question. I'll start with my Hong Kong friend first. Now, as we move into different regions and different homes, how would one coming from outside adopt to the social and cultural effects within the society in Hong Kong? Is that
I think
the challenges, or if there is no big deal?
I think Hong Kong is famous for being an international city since the beginning. Yeah, because we have people from all sorts of countries. And before, because Hong Kong is a trading center, I would say, and usually we are not very focused on R&D, and that is the reason why we are a financial center at the beginning. Yeah, because we are very used to adopt new technology, new culture, and also we are a very international friendly cities to all people from all sorts of world. So you'll be able to find all the banks internationally in Hong Kong. And also in terms of food, you can find all kinds of good foods in Hong Kong from different countries. And I think Hong Kong people are very adaptable. Yeah, because since the beginning, we are at the center of the hub, and we are at the beginning, the window to international for China before, right? And so basically there's the advantage that Hong Kong have. But of course, because the Hong Kong is a very small places, and the land here is very expensive. And that's why when we are developing the R&D, we need to be very focused, as mentioned by Brian, because we have very limited resources. So you can see that in Hong Kong, we have 3 key areas that we are focusing on. One is the MedTech and Biotech. Secondly is the FinTech, because Hong Kong is a financial hub. And another one is on the automation for the reindustrialization, because we know that we are in lack of labor, and also we are in lack of lands for big factory. So what we do is we need to make use of robotics, such that we can have the startup and also company who would like to have the product to have made in Hong Kong, and then they can still do it in a smart way and also cost-effective way. Great.
How about Thailand? What do you, I mean, it's already very popular with lots and lots of tourism, but when you start, I mean, I always say going for a holiday is different from going and living somewhere. So how does one sort of get used to it, or learn to live in Thailand? How does one do that?
I think Thailand is a good country to live, especially if you're expats. Like so many expats here, but it's a trade-off, right? Like it's a good country to live.
I'm not able to hear you. I'm not sure about the others. Can you hear her?
No,
No.
Oh,
We have
I
lost
think we
you.
lost her.
We have lost you.
yeah,
She's back.
the reception is not very good, seems that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
You
sorry,
have to
I'm back
repeat.
here.
You have to repeat whatever you said.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I said Thailand is a good place to live in, especially for expats, and we have so many expats. But Bangkok starts to be a country where it's a city where it's very expensive to live in, and I think it's again it's a trade-off, right? Like it's a good city to live in, it's a good place to travel, but I think the most important thing is regulatories, and if you're expat, if you want to do startups, and you have to have problems with visas and other stuff. I think that's something really bad. They're trying to make these things better for people from outside the countries to start new companies in here. But I think it just started. So that's why I say, when I look into Canada or Hong Kong, it's very tempting for startups like me to say, okay, I want to go there because, or even Singapore, like because the ecosystem is better compared to where I live. I shouldn't say that, but again, for me, I still do it here just because I want to do it here. Like I want to have local capacity for all of these things, medical technologies and stuff. It's for the countries, for the regions. Yeah.
Very good. Brian, that's an easy question for you about this culture thing in Canada, I guess.
You've been here, so you can see and you can know is that Canada is an incredibly multicultural country. You hear that, English and then French are the two official languages, but you can go to various cities here where if you don't speak English and you speak some, out of China, various languages, India, Pakistan, Thailand, it's that there are communities here. And that's the whole thing about Canada. It's an incredibly multicultural place. And so somebody can come in here and you're not home, you're not at home, but you can feel, relatively comfortable that you're not totally cut off from, it's not like going to someplace completely foreign. So I think that's a help for people as well too, is that particular element in Canada. Yeah.
And going back to that conversation, which are the regions in Canada is attractive for a startup to look at?
Yeah, I think with the slide kit I showed at the start, the biggest markets in Canada tend to be Ontario and Quebec. Mm-hmm. And Quebec is open in a lot of ways, but sometimes the biggest market, there's complexities that come with it as well too. Mm-hmm. That are there. But most of the medical technology industry is housed in Ontario, then Quebec, followed by BC and Alberta, because of the size of the market. And then, if you will, so a lot of people from Asia Pacific, there's a tendency to want to be in Vancouver, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you go, it's a tendency. It doesn't mean it's just that way. People go to other places as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I guess that's not a question I can ask in Hong Kong because it's too small. Like you say, everything is the same for that region. Now, definitely Thailand is a huge country, so there must be some regional preferences. Bangkok is. Been to Bangkok many of time. It's extremely crowded, traffic. You're stuck for hours. And it doesn't look any different from India, so I feel at home. So there you are. So where would you suggest for startups to sort of look at? You can't go to somewhere you don't get any support either. You need to be somewhere you get support. So which are the places happening in China?
Definitely Bangkok, right?
Yeah.
Crowded, traffic jam, Bangkok. Yeah. I know a lot of expats and I know a lot of startups that, and there's a community here in Bangkok, there's so many community of startups and, I think in goods, it's always bad. Like, like if you compare to Canada, I used to live in the US, it's cold. It's hot here. It's cold there. It depends on what weather you kind of like, right? There's traffic here, but then we have motorbike taxi. So in goods, there's in bads always, right? And if you find a way, and I think it depends on what startup, what things are you working on? Is there an opportunity here, and is it hard for regulations in that specific industries? I think that would better match. Like if you don't need much, related to regulations, you can be in Chiang Mai. It's cold. It's the weather is better. And it's cheaper compared to Bangkok. You might not want to stay in Phuket, but yeah. So it really depends.
Okay, so we have a good selection of places when we move. Now, in terms of obviously the pandemic is now, I mean, I usually end up in Canada every couple of months once in the past. I haven't gone now in almost more than a year. Now, do you think this has really hampered things on startups within your own environment? Let's not worry about who's coming in. Your own environments as startups struggle. So maybe I can take it from the Hong Kong situation first.
Okay. Yeah, you are pretty very familiar with us. It is true. I think it's not only in Hong Kong, but throughout the world. In the past 12 months, because I myself is also running a startup for almost 5 years. But we are pretty lucky because we raised the Series A fund back in 2019, and we closed it before the coming of COVID. But in the past 1 year, we are helping all kind of startup through government policy, subsidies, and also some policy of adopting the new technologies to different industry. Because cash flow is always very important to a startup. Okay, especially they don't have much revenue. But as a startup, we see that the fundraising is almost stopped in the first and the second quarter in this year. And this will create a lot of financial issue to the company. And what we try to do is that we persuade the government through policy so that they can subsidize part of the manpower, okay, for the especially startup. And also, for example, in Science Park, they try to waive the rental fee also for the company in Science Park in the past 6 months. And this helped a lot, especially in the cash flow. And also another policy, what we try to implement in Hong Kong is the loan guarantee by the government. Okay, so the banks are more willing to lend money to the startup so that they can partially help them to solve the cash flow issue. And also, we can see that a lot of startups will adopt pretty quickly, as just mentioned before by other speakers, is that they try to see how their technology, especially for example, some IT technology, even though they are not medical, they can be also helpful in like applying in the teleconsultation, delivery of the drugs for the clinic and hospital. And some of them is just helping out, for example, to identify the location of COVID patient. And all this kind of new adaptation for particular use in COVID also help to solve some of the issue of the startup, especially those who are not working in the medical field.
Very good. How about in Thailand? What have you all done to help these struggling startups over this period? I mean, it's a really challenging time for all of us, not only startups, but everybody.
Yeah.
So what done in Thailand?
I think startups are considered as a small companies in Thailand, and they have some kind of fundings to help. But I think the good thing about this in Thailand is that so far we don't have a big outbreak. We are the first few countries that has the COVID-19 cases, but we still don't have a big outbreaks right now. So life are pretty normal except the masks on. I think life are pretty normal here in Thailand. So things are going on. I mean, the business itself, it's not as busy as it used to be, but still, like, things are, like restaurants are open, everything is open, kids go to school. So that's a good thing about this, like, but I think we become more fragile, that countries around us, we have imported case from the borders, and when that's changed, when the situation change, this might change as well. So it's a good thing for us in Thailand, and I think it's a good thing, like if you do startups here now, office are very cheap because they're free spaces, because there's so many companies that, so opportunities, rentals are good, and And there's so many people that can work for you, right? So if you have the opportunities, then if you have the thing, you can launch it right now. Especially when the things are going on in business are still going as usual in Thailand.
And how in Canada?
I think the two areas to touch upon is the ability in terms of how you're going to sell, market, and distribute your product in the current COVID environment, and then the product that you have. So to touch upon first the selling or distributing the product, the paradigm is shift. Like for companies, the way you have to sell, to go out there to talk to potential customers, to get your product into distribution and adoption, it's different now. You don't have as much one-to-one interaction. You've got to do things virtually. So if you will, the selling model has changed. And so that's a little bit of a barrier that's put up. But on the conversely to that, if you've got products that actually fit into the mold of PPE, in vitro diagnostics, vaccination supplies, and virtual care, the areas I talked about in terms of opportunity, I've had people come in and join the association that are foreign companies. They just call a government and actually send a one-pager of what their product is. They're getting into conversations. So never before have they been invited into those conversations. So depending on the product you have, it could be a lot more difficult if you have a more traditional product you're trying to sell, that you're in a competitive environment, versus these solutions they're looking for. The doors are flying open for those particular products.
So it's not all bad news. That means
No,
they
it's
are.
not.
Yeah. So some people are doing well, I suppose. We were like
They are.
In healthcare and so on. It's open up opportunities.
It has. It has. And virtual care is one of those big areas. PPE is one, you know, and what we talked about, those particular doors are open. Anything that's going to make things more efficient and less touch points, those people are they're getting called back, because there's almost a desperate desire to how do we get greater medical efficiency and change the system overall. Even people that are coming up with solutions that are process solutions in terms of, you know, if you take a surgery, you know, surgical planning through to taking a patient to plan for the surgery itself, and then post-surgical care. They're looking across those three elements of a surgical procedure, looking for greater efficiencies. So that's opened those doors. Most of the traditional manufacturers, though, it's if you're a larger company, you're learning to adapt to it. If you're a smaller company, I think it's setting up barriers.
Now, we all talk about the new normal. What is, in your view, is that going to be new normal? Are we going to be back to where we were 12 months ago? What do you feel in your environment? I mean, not taking the whole world, but just where you are. Like, for example, I'll start with Brian. What do you think will happen to the Canadians in Canada maybe in the next 12 months? Are we going to go back to the way we did things in the past? Or are we going to be, you know, having a new norm? Like, that's what's been the highlight of conversation these days.
What we believe is that virtual care is going to make it more efficient. Like I said at the start of the presentation, is that Canada always had a backlog for procedures because we weren't that efficient. So the paradigm is shifting in terms of funding for paying physician fee codes and other things for virtual care and those virtual solutions. If you're somebody like, if you're a diabetic patient, type 2 diabetes now, you can actually take your blood glucose monitoring and your blood pressure, and you can send it to your physician, and you can talk to her in a 5-minute conversation and be done. She can now see 50, 60% more patients in a time period. You can do this stuff yourself. All these things are going to change it. I think that, though, within the next year, things will slide back, some of them more the other way in terms of whatever, but there's going to be a new normal. It's not going to be a poll, totally virtual or totally the way it was. It's going to be somewhere in between.
Okay. And what do you think in Thailand? How does, I mean, you said so far you haven't been much affected yet, but I mean, it still affects you because the outside world is all affected. So what's your views on the new normal?
I think for me, the new normals for startups in Thailand is that for me, like working on biotech startups, I wouldn't have a chance to raise funds, especially from crowdfunding. We're gonna do big crowdfunding today, $17 million. but we wouldn't be able to do this, you know, without COVID. And I think this will change the way pharma will be forever. You know, there will be small companies like this. There will be opportunities for, you know, small companies, not just big pharmaceutical companies that we have to rely on anymore. Countries will start thinking about how to build local capacities. So I think for me, that's new normal for me. And you know, a lot of business that we have been fighting for a very long time, like digital care, it starts with COVID-19. So COVID-19 disrupt for me, this is a new normal for startups. So, you know, things that we wouldn't imagine that would happen in 1 year has been, you know, fast forward and finished in 1 year. So I think that's a good thing, and that's a new normal for me.
And how about here in Hong Kong? What do you think?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with both speakers. Yeah, because I think, for example, take Hong Kong as example. Before, when we are talking about teleconsultation, we may find it's quite difficult to get the medical staff to agree to do that, because before they will be in touch with their patient. They are, even while looking on the screen, they will be care whether the screen will distort the color of what they are seeing. Okay, but after COVID, the adoption of technologies is much more faster, and as I mentioned, is a fast forward. Okay, and they even accept with the signature of their patient, the drug can be delivered directly from clinic to the home, to the door, to the patient, and that happened before COVID. Okay, and also this also create a lot of technology, as Chair has mentioned. It create a lot of opportunity to start up. Take a company as an example. Before, we are doing some AI for people on sleep apnea, but because of COVID, we make use of our wearable device for remote monitoring for medical IoT, such that the doctor can know whether the patient is deteriorating at home. Okay, and this kind of adoption will be bringing up a lot of opportunities for the startup, as long as they can move fast and change fast. But one point very important is that it's not just about the technologies. Very important is the touch point. Okay, whether the system is easy to use, especially for elderly. Okay, we are not talking about like smartphone. Yeah, it may be very easy to our generation, but to the elderly, when you're asking them to pair these and to link up with the Wi-Fi and with the login, if all the process is so complicated, then it is very difficult for the elderly to adopt it, and this will keep them away from adopting the technologies. But for example, when we design it, it's so simple to them. It's just turn on the button and everything, wow, it's done. And they don't even need to travel. Then they will start thinking about, wow, I can also make use of the technology to make my life easier and better. And also I can have an interaction with my family, just like in COVID, when their kids and grandson cannot go to their home, they will start using Zoom as well, right? And there's the kind of changes that can bring about to the older generation, for them also to make use of the technologies, I would say.
Okay, my final question started with Lindy. What should a startup do if they were interested to come and work in Hong Kong? What would be the first thing they should?
The first thing that they can do is very important, is make use of Hong Kong Wealth policy, especially in subsidizing startups to develop their R&D in Hong Kong. And that is very important, because in Hong Kong, there is now organization who help startup when they just come to Hong Kong. They can understand the funding that can be provided, the policy that can be benefit them. And also we have organizations to help them to understand how from Hong Kong to start your R&D and then bring back your technologies to Asia, to China, and also to the America. Indeed, we not only subsidize the startup, but very important is how we can bring the technologies that they develop in Hong Kong to all over the world.
And how about, what would you suggest, Suthira?
I think you have to have a strength to fight through the whole system, but you know, it's not a good answer. Especially I'm Thai, you know, I'm a Thai living in Thailand, but I would like to have more communities. That's why I start all of this. I'm actually a still a professor in the university, but I really want to have this ecosystem, started. It's and I want to go back to be, a professor, and I want my students to do all of this. So I encourage people to come in, but you need to have a strength to grow through this system. I just want to start, have a success case, and then I can go back to my normal life.
Okay, cool. Brian.
Be a professor.
I like that answer. That was good.
Brian, in your view, what would be the good thing?
Sure. You really have to understand the market and your product and how it fits into the market and what the demand could be here. And then how are you going to go through the approval process? But more importantly, in terms of the commercialization, is moving through and understanding that process, targeting your market, knowing what the demand is, finding some partner or somebody to help it, because that is always the prime a barrier, is actually moving through to adoption and commercialization. So you have to make sure that there will be a demand here, and then how are you going to create that demand and actually enter into that marketplace to get the product utilized, because it truly is a barrier for a lot of startups. I think going around the world, it's like I've heard one large company head of research and development call the big companies the strategic firms. And the reason that that person was using that term is that they had enough people or enough resources in the marketplace to be able to push forward with commercialization. So how do you make sure that you've got that? Building the best mousetrap doesn't mean that they'll always come. Maybe COVID has changed that a little bit, right? That's what we're feeling right now in terms of some particular products. But you need to know the marketplace and what you need to do to get it sold there. And I'm sure you've seen that by working in Atlantic Canada yourself.
And your closing remarks before we end our conversation for this morning. What would be your final remarks?
If you're asking me, I just want to thank everybody for listening and for allowing me to speak about Canada and the Canadian marketplace. Please reach out if you want me to connect you with anybody that can help you with the Canadian marketplace.
Great. And Suthira, what would you like to say?
Yeah, it's a very nice conversation. I'm so sorry I'm in the car again.
No problem.
But it's very nice to talk to you, Brian and Lydia, and also you, Muthu. I think for me, I would like people to work more on this. I think with more people doing more of these, I think people working on startup has we start with a good intention to change something, right? And I think with more people doing that, I think the world will be a better place. I know it's a very cliche answer, but I think that's most of us why we all started this. So so that's my last remarks. Thank
Fantastic. You. Since you started with the first comment, you can also end with the last comment.
Yeah, I think COVID has opened a new normal, and should be a new normal to lots of startups and opportunity. And I think together with the R&D and development, we can make it a better world and a healthier world.